Hello, monsters, minions, and masters of the macabre, and welcome to Chocolate Chip Horror, the only podcast with ooey gooey horror goodness in every bite. I'm the Wolfman himself, Anthony, and I'm joined by my wife, Andrea, the Queen of Harpies, who will be your villains for this listening session. Today is July 2nd, 2026, and this is episode 2 of our podcast. So you're getting a bonus episode this week to celebrate our launch, and we hope you're as excited about that as we are. Now, if you didn't get a chance to listen to our first episode, feel free to stop this one and go back and check out episode 1, where we introduce you to who we are, what this podcast is all about, and how Andre and I discovered and fell in love with the horror genre. New episodes every Thursday, wherever you get your podcasts. And before I lose my head, let me just remind you, goblins, to visit us in the digital graveyard. Follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube to connect with us, see some of our artwork, and get updates on everything we're digging into. Also, be sure to check out our official Etsy store at etsy.com/shop/chocolate chip horror. Whether you're a true final girl or just the last man standing, if you're quick, you can grab one of our limited edition cookie tins, handmade and designed by our very own Queen of Harpies, and filled with spooky vinyl stickers and magnetic bookmarks, all hand-drawn, printed, laminated, and die-cut by yours truly. Get them while supplies last, or die trying.
Also, we can't forget about today's snack. We made a beautiful and delicious plum upside-down cake. It looks intimidating, almost like a gothic centerpiece with deep red and purple swirled flesh of juicy plums, but it is all bark and no bite. It felt like the absolute perfect moody visual companion for Undertone. Despite its dramatic appearance, it was incredibly easy to execute. To add even more crimson color, we topped it with a bit of raspberry coulis, and it was phenomenal. The surprises interwoven into the film, particularly at the end, make the plum upside-down cake with raspberry coulis the perfect treat to pair with this film. Just like Undertone, it is full of surprises. Want to give it a try? Don't forget to check out any of our social media pages or our Substack for a link to the recipes.
Okay, enough about all of that. On today's episode, we're going to be putting on our noise-canceling headphones and fully immersing ourselves in Ian Tuasen's 2026 audio-visual terror, Undertone, written and directed by Tuasen in his directorial debut and starring Nina Curry and Adam DeMarco. For those of you who haven't seen it yet, just a quick no spoilers synopsis for you. So the film centers around a young woman named Evie, played by Nina Curry, who, after being away from her home for a while, suddenly has to return home to care for her bedridden, dying mother. While she wrestles with this, along with a strained relationship, she also hosts a creepy podcast along with her friend Justin, voiced by Adam DeMarco. Since Justin currently resides in London and Evie somewhere in the States, she can only co-host between 2 and 3 a.m. to make up for the time zone difference. So anyway, Justin tells Evie that he anonymously received an email containing 10 audio files and has the genius idea, and I'm saying genius in quotes because it's not really a genius idea, but he has the genius idea that instead of listening to all 10 files by himself, he and Evie can listen to them all together on air during the podcast recording. They have no idea what is on the recordings, but neither of them are truly prepared for what they hear. That's all I'm going to give you. So if I had your curiosity, and now, after that synopsis, I have your attention, you'll be happy to know that at the time of this podcast recording, Undertone is currently available for streaming on most sites like Hulu, HBO Max, and Amazon Prime. So, first off, how meta are we right now? Like doing a horror podcast about a film involving characters who are doing a horror podcast. Like that right there is just a little ridiculous. I didn't plan that, but
I did.
It's like the perfect, it couldn't have been a better film to kick this off. So I know we're sort of new on the scene for podcast channels, but I learned enough from this film to know if I receive any random emails with files attached, no, delete and keep it moving. I don't even need that drama. So we're not doing that. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about first impressions of this film. What were you thinking?
Well, I remember when we saw this, we're not the only ones in the theater,
Right.
which is kind of amazing because we're usually the only ones in the theater when we go to the movies.
Yeah.
And I remember everybody being completely silent and then everybody being like, wow, at the end of it. We were both really impressed when we left the theater.
Yes, I thought it was a great film.
We thought it was great, but I don't think we realized just how great it was until we rewatched it specifically for this podcast. I have pages of notes, so many pages of notes that I cannot wait for us to dive into.
And like, that's not something that we do on a regular basis. Like, typically we'll watch a movie and we'll just talk about it a little bit, but we don't really like deep dive into it. Like, we were able to pull back layers in this film. It was ridiculous.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just really excited to discuss this because there's just so much here to unpack.
Definitely. I need to just point out that I loved how the film not only took place in essentially one location, but that the only actors that you ever see are Evie and her mother. Every other person is just a voice, even when, and this might be spoilery, but even when the nurse shows up.
By the way, this is going to be a pretty spoilerific episode.
Yeah.
So if you have not seen the film yet, you might want to stop, watch the film, and then come back.
Especially if you're one of those people where you have to see it yourself. You don't want anybody to spoil it for you. Just go ahead and stop the recording and go watch the film. Like, do that first. Like I was saying, when the nurse comes in, you don't see the nurse. You only hear her voice.
I think you see a little bit of like her hand or her arm while she's talking to Evie, but that is it.
If she's not talking to, her mom laying in bed, like, she's not talking to anybody. And I really feel like that kind of plays into the idea of just how lonely this space is.
Very isolating.
Now, I felt like this film kind of separates itself from other horror films in so many ways, specifically the way that it relies so heavily on the sound design and the spatial audio. I mean, that's kind of what draws you into the film in the first place. That's really what they were marketing, is like, this is like an audio experience. But it really uses sound to its like extreme advantage in this film. And it's not just because like certain sounds become amplified when there's nothing else going on in the scene. It's more like about the absence of sound. And, when she puts her noise canceling headphones on and you hear that, and like, now, you're like in that. You're like, there's nothing that she can hear outside of those headphones. But yeah, so, I mean, it's a truly audible experience. Even when a transition happens and it's like a transition between one scene and another scene, the screen will turn black, but the audio won't stop. So you won't see anything on the screen. And I'm sure that's intentional, but you'll still hear it.
Yeah.
It forces you to kind of sit with whatever sounds or silence is in that scene. This film is really good about putting you in that uncomfortable spot and just making you feel like, I don't like how this feels.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's like a lot of stillness where it gives you the opportunity to kind of look around the room and see what's going on. But then there's also the sound that you're listening to while you're scanning the room to see what's going on.
Right.
And I feel like a lot of people have said, oh, there's nothing happening in this movie. Why are people saying so many good things about this movie? This is a movie where you have to watch it more than once in order to fully pick up on all the little details. You need to watch it with some headphones, and you also need to really make sure you're scanning the walls, you're looking at the shelves.
Yeah.
Because there are so many things. Even Evie's clothes are super important to the story.
Yeah, and you like pointed that out to me because I wasn't really paying attention to it. And so when you pointed out that Evie was wearing red and blue, and I was like, well, what does that mean? And you were like, well, that's the colors that are typically used in the Pietà. It's not a coincidence that she's wearing those same colors. Like, that was an intentional choice. And this movie is full of those.
It's the Pietà, but also the Madonna and Child. So those two pieces of art are similar, but there's some distinct differences. So the Madonna and Child, that's Mary holding Jesus as a baby.
Right.
But then the Pietà, that's Mary holding Jesus's dead body. And I think that the way that it aligns to the film is pretty amazing because we have Evie, we find out that she's pregnant. And throughout the whole movie, we're talking about pregnant women or women who have recently had children and they kill their babies.
Right.
So, the phone calls that we get during the podcast, they of course seem devastated that they have hurt their child, but they couldn't control themselves. Whereas with, the Madonna and the Child, she's literally holding her baby. There's some semblance of love there, I think.
Right. And I mean, this film, it goes kind of back and forth with that. Like when you hear the phone message that her mom left, which I have to assume was like the last message that she left her before she got as sick as she did. You can tell how much she cared about her. And I think, and you may have even pointed this out, I think even more so, you can hear how scared she is for her daughter. And that's the reason why when she ends that call, she does say to her, like, I'm praying for you. When you take all this at face value, it doesn't seem like it is trying to say something. There's no message there. It's just dialogue for the sake of dialogue. But when you really sit with it, like this film forces you to do, everything seems like it's a message and everything feels intentional. And, you know, when all the scary stuff starts happening, that doesn't change. And that's why you become so immersed in it. But yeah, like their use of sound in the film was just so effective. More effective in this film than I can honestly say in a lot of films.
Also, I thought it was important to note that toward the end of the film, the sound is so evil because we see Evie trying to rest. She takes her mom's pills. We're assuming they're her mom's pills of lorazepam. It's misspelled, so we're not really sure what the deal was there.
Right.
But Evie takes the pills. She lays down. The room is red and blue, so I feel like it's a pretty clear indication that something sinister is happening.
Right.
And then she puts in her headphones, and she's listening to her meditation app to try to fall asleep. And the meditation app is saying all sorts of like really weird, crazy stuff about dead babies and watching them float in the air and seeing them in the water. And then it causes Evie to have a nightmare, which we'll probably talk about a little bit more later, but I thought that was just important to note.
Yeah. Now I wanted to deep dive into the plot and some of the like many things that we actually discovered and researched during our viewing of the film. One of the first scenes is simply a still of a pair of reading glasses on top of a Bible. And when you first see the film, that's not going to stand out to you. You ain't paying attention to that. You know what I'm saying? Like that's just part of the set as far as you're concerned, especially because the scenes are kind of like a slideshow. You know, it's like there's just showing you pictures about the room essentially.
So you kind of just assume, oh, this is just showing us that it's a very religious household.
Right. And that's even if you pick up on that, because I will tell you the first time that I saw it, I did not really put two and two together. I didn't even know it was a Bible at first. I just thought it was a book, you know, because you're just watching it very casually. But just to use that scene as an example, the lens of the glasses are magnifying two very important scriptures.
Actually, three.
Three scriptures.
So the first verse reads, "And people weeping and wailing loudly. And when he had entered, he said to them, 'Why do you make a tumult and weep? The child is not dead, but sleeping.' And they laughed at him." So that's Mark chapter 5, verse 39, which speaks to the overall themes of life and death that we see throughout the film.
Yep.
Evie's mother's imminent death, the probable death of Evie's baby, and then the gradual decay of Evie's sanity.
Like it speaks on all of those things.
Yeah. Like we really start to question her sanity, like I feel like pretty early on in the film.
Yeah.
So then we also see bits of another verse. You can't see the whole thing, but when I looked it up, I was able to get more information about it. And it says, "And brought his head in a charger and gave it to the damsel, and the damsel gave it to her mother. And when his disciples heard of it, they came and took up his corpse and laid it in a tomb." So that's Mark chapter 6, verses 28 and 29. This actually refers to the beheading of John the Baptist. I'm probably going to butcher some of these names. Please forgive me.
Yeah, I don't expect to get any of them right. Like, what's the first name? Like Herodias or
Herodias.
Herodias, okay.
So Herodias is the wife of King Herod Antipas, and she partnered with her daughter Salome. Sorry if I said it wrong. And they both went to the king and said that they wanted John the Baptist beheaded. The king reluctantly did it, which I think kind of refers back to the whole weird mother and daughter dynamic that we have with Evie and her mother. Very dark, very creepy. There's a detail that we found out about her mother when we looked at some of her medication in the medicine cabinet. And we found out that her mom's name literally means darkness or shadow.
Right. And again, you would not be able to make that connection in the time that it takes to see that medicine bottle. You're on your first view because you know you're in the theater. You can't pause it or rewind or anything like that. You're not going to catch that. But that was purposely put there so that when the film did make itself available to you and you could control it, then you could go back and catch it. Like those were intentional choices that I just thought were genius.
Yeah. I think the name is read M. Oscura. So I thought that was really fascinating. So this verse also mentions a tomb, which is essentially what the house is in the movie. Evie comments on how she can't wait for things to end so she can leave the house. Her mother literally can't leave the house because of her illness. And realistically, Evie can't really leave the house that much either because she's caring for her mother and she's doing it all by herself. And when she does leave the house, it presents a major problem. So the next verse says, "Come away by yourselves to a lonely place and rest a while." That's Mark chapter 6, verse 31. So this verse foreshadows how isolated Evie becomes while she's in the house taking care of her mother, as well as her inability to sleep. She talks about how she's not sleeping, how she's really, really tired and she wishes that she could sleep. But it also kind of alludes to the fact that her getting comfortable in this house is a bit of a trap.
Yeah, and that loneliness and that isolation, again, those are intentional choices. Like that is part of the reason why the film feels so heavy when she's at that table doing the podcast. Mm-hmm. It's just like we see several scenes where it is obvious something is watching her,
Mm-hmm.
I love the way that the film handles those spaces because it's just a kitchen. It's just a stairwell. It's just a room. But at that time of day, like 3 in the freaking morning, by yourself with noise canceling headphones, pitch black outside, any space will seem like a haunted house,
Yeah.
And so like that isolation is just amplified by the fact that she's in that house. She can't really leave. She's by herself. It's just the whole scene always just feels so heavy in those times.
I also wanted to quickly mention that there was a shot of rosary beads. I can't remember if it took place before the Bible verses that we see or if it happens after the Bible verses in the glasses. But we do see a quick shot of rosary beads, which I think is really important because, in Catholicism, when you're using rosary beads, you end up saying Hail Marys quite a bit. And Evie mentions that her mom said Hail Mary for her pretty regularly as a child growing up. And also, Jessa, we hear recordings of Jessa and Mike while Evie and Justin are recording their podcast. Jessa mentions that she said Hail Marys while she was afraid, but then her shadow also started saying Hail Mary with her.
Yeah, and that's just a little creepy, I think. I don't know. All this symbolism, it sort of plays into the definition of the word undertone for me. I actually looked up the definition of it because I just felt like there was a lot behind that word, behind that title that they chose for the movie. So I looked it up. Webster's dictionary defines the word undertone in like a few different ways. So the first way is slightly obvious. It says, quote, a low or subdued utterance or accompanying sound. So like someone making a petty comment under their breath, or like a low hum coming from your PC while the fans are going on. Those type of things. That would be considered an undertone. Then it defines an undertone as, quote, a quality as of emotion that is present but not clear or obvious. So like a movie that might present itself as a comedy but with a dark undertone, that's another way that they would define that word. And then it defines it as, quote, a subdued color or a color seen through and modifying another color, like a blue shirt with gray undertones. And then finally, a secondary or underlying flavor or scent. So like a piece of chocolate with orange undertones. So all of these definitions are accurate, obviously, and we use them. But the first two definitions, speaking of the low utterance and of the, quote, emotion that is present but not clear or obvious, I feel like both of those definitions fit very well with the theme of the film.
Definitely.
Now, as Andrea was pointing out, there's a lot of religious, no pun intended, undertones to the film. Bottom line, the movie is like ripe with religious references. You're going to see crosses. You're going to see pictures of Jesus. I think there's a painting of the Last Supper, and all of them, again, are put there intentionally. They all are saying something. And Andrea noticed a lot more of those references than I did.
One thing that we noticed was a little figurine of the Virgin Mary in her light blue garb. But then there's also a light blue candle directly in front of her. And the candle looks like it was blown out.
Right.
But there are also other candles throughout the house, and they're all lit. You mentioned that candle specifically looks like it was blown out instead of burning out on its own.
Right, because it was still tall, but like the wick was burned out. And there's so many other candles in there that stay lit. I'm just like, why is that one blue candle not lit and all the other ones are? Some people might hear some of these things that we're bringing up and feel like we're kind of reaching, but I just feel
we're
like
not.
I feel like we're just delving very far into the intention of the film.
On the piano, we see the image of Jesus with the Sacred Heart.
Yep.
And I don't know if you noticed this, but by the end of the movie, that picture is not there anymore, but everything else is.
Yeah, and you had to point it out to me because I didn't notice that. When it scans across the room, when everything is like popping off towards the end, that painting's not on the wall anymore. And it's not that it fell. I don't think she took it down. It's just gone.
Yeah.
And, that I interpret that as like, okay, this house is now being fully inhabited by evil. All the crosses and pictures of Jesus are not going to save you now. It's too late.
It's too late. There's also, right next to that picture of Jesus, there's like a little plaque on the piano. I looked it up because remember you were like, oh, that says children are a heritage from the Lord. Come to find out, that is a psalm.
Okay.
I had no idea.
Me neither.
And it's right next to that picture of Jesus. Like you mentioned, there's the Last Supper right behind Evie. Every time she records her podcast, we have that picture. I'm wondering if it's more about death. Like, are we seeing it because it has to do with death, or are we seeing it because Evie betrays her mom somehow?
See, I didn't think of it that way. The theory that Evie did something nefarious to her mom is always there, And if you put the pieces together, it's possible, she could have euthanized her own mother. That's just one theory. I'm not necessarily saying that definitely happened, but when you start to put all the pieces together, like that's definitely a possibility, and some of the images and references that we see could be sort of leading you towards that idea. Like, yeah, she killed her mom. That's why a lot of this is happening.
I mean, she literally says at the end of the film that she killed her mother, but we can't really tell if she means that literally or if she means that she did it through, like, indirectly, because she says, oh, my mother asked me to pray with her every day when she realized that she was really sick, and I told her no because I was too busy and I had too many things going on, but that just wasn't true.
Right.
So it's hard to tell if she really meant that she killed her mom or if she just meant that she wasn't the best daughter.
I mean, maybe a little bit from column A.
And a little bit from column B.
Exactly. Like, she was pretty much dry snitching on herself.
In her mom's bedroom, we do see a picture of Our Lady of Perpetual Help.
Right.
And there are times where you'll see the picture very clearly, but you also see Evie in her blue and red outfits, blue, red, white. Even when Evie comes across this figurine, there's a figurine in the film. When you look at it, at first glance, it looks like it's just the Virgin Mary.
Right.
But this thing is twisted. There's no way it's Mary. It's a woman, and she has like all these babies crawling up her, and she's holding her chest open and showing where her heart should be. So almost like in contrast to our Jesus with the Sacred Heart image.
Again, first time I saw the film, I paid no attention to that part. I was just like, oh, it must be some sort of religious doll or something. But even the pained look on the little statue's face is clear. This is not a typical religious figurine. This is something evil.
Yeah.
And when Evie first comes across it, she shoves it in a drawer because even she is like, I don't like this,
And even the drawer gives us a lot of information. So she shoves it in the drawer. We see a little sewing kit. The sewing kit shows us blue, red, and white thread.
Right. And we're going to keep seeing that throughout the entire film.
And then right next to it, we see a box of crayons. And then right under the box of crayons, we see this black and red illustration that looks like something a child would have done, but there's no children in the house. It was definitely Evie. And we continue to see her coloring pictures throughout the rest of the movie.
And she never actually explains it away. She doesn't obviously tell Justin that she's doing it or anybody else, but like, it's almost, when she first started doing it, I thought it was maybe like an anxiety thing, like it's something that she does to calm down.
Almost like an adult coloring book.
Right, but she's drawing in such an infantile manner, she's not even trying to make it look like not sketchy kid drawings. And as the film progresses, the choices that she makes in the film start to become a little bit more like unhinged, and so does the drawing. And you're just like, okay, she's stepping further and further away from like sanity.
Yeah.
It becomes a little alarming.
At one point, she kind of happily does this, I feel like. She mentions to her mom that she's pregnant. She goes, Mama, I'm pregnant. Your baby girl's going to have a baby girl. Like, she actually seems happy. And she says that she wants to name the baby Mary.
Right.
I don't think that's a coincidence that she wants to name the baby Mary. But then she pretty abruptly says, but I don't think I would be a good mother.
You're right. And I don't know if when she said that, it was just her basically saying like, I'm not in a place to be a good mom. I've got too much on my mind, or if it was like guilt for something that she'd done. Like, I'm not even a good daughter. What makes me think I'm going to be a good mother? You know what I mean? Like kind of that confessional. The whole house is one big confessional if you think about it.
When she makes that comment that she doesn't think she'll be a good mother, the lights start to flicker.
Right. Her mom was basically saying, bingo. But I was like, maybe not. Maybe that's not it. But the fact that when she said that, then the lights turned on, it was kind of just like, not a coincidence. So now we're going to transition over to one aspect of the film that a lot of people found to be truly creepy, which was the reverse audio tracking in the childhood songs like Baba Black Sheep and London Bridges. One of the creepiest narrative devices probably in the last few years when it comes to like recent horror. I am not sure why, but for some odd reason, when you include popular children's songs in a horror movie, always just has a tendency to creep me out. Like, we've seen so many horror movies put children and children's songs in movies to make it more creepy. And then, of course, everybody started doing it. You started seeing it in like almost all the movies. It lost some of its flair. But in this film, it's like perfectly effective. I had a hard time pinpointing why. I was like, what is it about this film that makes that so creepy? I mean, when you play a song backwards anyway, it doesn't really matter what that song is. But once you play it back, it just sounds so strange.
Yeah.
I don't know if you had heard this before, but if you play Stairway to Heaven backwards, it has all these messages about Satan, and you can hear his name pretty clearly in the recording. And then, of course, there's all the like dark stories that are behind certain children's nursery rhymes, like the story behind London Bridges, or like the story behind Baba Black Sheep and things like that. Like Baba Black Sheep was more about taxation and less about what they said it was about in the movie. Yeah. Like the idea of taking something like a children's song or even a children's book, like we saw in like the Babadook, for instance, and making that creepy, that's a common thing, actually. It's a lot more common than we think. There's this German book that comes to mind. It was called Der Struwelpeter. I'm pretty sure I didn't say that right. But
said it better than I would have said it.
It loosely translates to Slovenly Peter, or like shock-headed Peter. And essentially, it's this children's book that teaches children through rhyming stories about bad habits that kids have. And then it shows them like these really graphic consequences if the children continue the bad habits. We wouldn't show kids this kind of stuff, but like, just for an example, one of the girls in the book, she's playing with matches. And obviously you don't want children playing with matches. You could burn your fingers or something. Why doesn't it show her setting herself on fire and dying in the book? And the only person mourning her death is her cat. That's in the book. They didn't edit that out. They didn't try to play that, like downplay that or anything. They were just like, if you play with matches, you will burn and die. Like, and that was it. Or like, one of the characters in the book, he constantly sucks his thumb. And, obviously parents have been telling their kids for years, like, stop sucking your thumb. But in this book, they tell the kid not to suck on his thumb. Then they leave the house and he's by himself and he commences to continue sucking his thumb. And then some weird character called the tailor breaks into the house with these huge, like, they look like shears that you would use to cut bushes, but like huger than that. And this guy comes in and cuts the kid's thumbs off. And in the illustration, the kid is standing there with missing thumbs, blood dripping down his hands, with this sad look on his face. Like, I should have sucked my thumb. Like, whoa. Like,
I mean, in the movie, Evie and Justin discuss how children's songs are often cautionary tales, so...
I don't think I would have read that to my kids. So we obviously cannot talk about this film without pointing out the obvious, which is at some point you do realize that what is happening in that house is a slow and steady demonic possession. And we've seen our fair share of demonic possession films. And a lot of them are good. Just to name a few, we both enjoy The Exorcism of Emily Rose, for instance, which came out in 2005. We also were big fans of Last Exorcism, which came out in 2010. I realized When Evil Lurks is a demonic possession film, but I don't think either one of us liked that as much as everybody else did. I'd be willing to at least try to watch it again.
I wouldn't.
I don't think it would change my mind. And then, of course, you got Late Night with the Devil from 2023, which we both loved. I'm a big fan of David Desmarian. And then, obviously, the Evil Dead series and the Conjuring series. And then, of course, Hereditary, which in my opinion is probably at the top of that list of demonic possession films. So, this film, it could have done the typical demonic possession thing the same way all those other films do, But I think instead they found a way to weave that story into their story. And just the way that they did it, it created it was used as a catalyst for all the things that were happening. It wasn't just like this priest gets a call and ends up at the house and he's trying to get this demon out of this girl. You know what I'm saying? We've seen that 1,000 times. Or, when she finally realizes what's happening, it is towards the end. It isn't like, we know pretty early on she's got a demon in her and there has to be somebody to save her and get it out and exorcise her or whatever. It just,
there's no power of Christ compels you.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
There's not going to be any pea soup getting spit across the room or any bedrock and nothing like that. And so overall, I felt like the film was innovative. It may have taken small ideas and found a way to reimagine them into a new thing. And as far as I'm concerned, that's all you really need to do. No one's asking anybody out here to come up with these amazing, untouched stories. And I get so annoyed when people are like, that's been done before. They've done, and I'm just like, yeah, but it wasn't done this way. One of the biggest arguments people have for Sinners is that it's essentially just From Dusk Till Dawn, but they changed the story, And I'm like, I have never felt comfortable about that opinion because I'm just like, they're two different films. And
these are the same people who will profess their love for Dracula and Nosferatu.
Right. But the way that they were able to weave the demon story into this story, I felt like was done very well. For anybody who is not familiar with the demon in the film, I love it when they give the demon an actual name in films and it's not just the demon. And it's not just Satan. It's always a demon. And in a lot of cases, it's a demon that actually exists in somebody's folklore.
Right.
So in Hereditary, we had Payman. And I'd never heard the name Payman before. So of course, I'd look it up, expecting it to not exist.
And it definitely does exist.
There is a Payman. Or even in The Exorcism of Emily Rose, when she's like kirking out and naming all of those demons before she, confesses that she is, Beelzebub. All those demons' names were real demons. And there's no difference in this film. Abazu is a real demon, a female demon who steals and strangles babies and causes miscarriages in women who can give birth because Abazu is infertile and she's completely driven by sheer envy. And envy is what basically turned her into the demon. And I just found that to be both interesting and creepy at the same time. I feel like you have something that just blew your mind. You got to share with the listeners. What did you just figure out?
Okay. So remember when we were watching it earlier and we were like, man, okay, we see the red, the white, the blue, but there's also a lot of green.
Yes, and we pointed that out. I was like, the staircase is green. That rag by the sink is green. Like, we're seeing a lot more green now. Why is that?
Green with envy.
Whoa. Did you guys hear that explosion? That was my brain. And this is the reason why I'm married to her, because she will point out things that I did not even think about. And yes, I truly believe that the green that was used in that film was definitely intentional. It makes perfect sense. The entire reason why Abazu does the things that she does is because she is envious of any human woman who can actually bear children, because she cannot. So she is, in fact, green with envy. That is genius. That's just so genius. And like, again, I'm sure somebody's listening to this and they're just going, you are reaching right now. But I'm just like, no, like that to me, I'm putting 2 and 2 together on that one. That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's a real demon. It's got real lore behind it. And I feel like the film does its best to sort of change little things without changing the entire lore. So for instance, when they brought up the lady who apparently was in charge of
The queen consort?
Yes, the queen consort. When they brought up the queen consort and they talked about how she became obsessed with the idea that the bridge would fail if she didn't sacrifice children to it. So she ordered the builders to bury orphan children in the foundation of it. I looked that up and that part was not true. But if you weren't interested in looking it up, sounds like it could be true. I don't know what went on back then. I wasn't there. People back then must have been cray.
But it makes you wonder if it's true in the movie or if, Evie just kind of made it up in her head that Justin said that because Abazu was trying to take over.
That's another really important theory, is that some of the things that she's hearing that we just take for granted she's actually hearing, maybe those are not actual people. Maybe those aren't. Maybe those are just Abazu essentially warping her mind.
Yeah.
And she's hearing stuff that's not there. She's seeing stuff that's not there. There's plenty of times in the film where even though she's got noise canceling headphones on and there wouldn't be any reason for her to turn around like she heard something, she does it on multiple occasions. And of course, in this film, which I absolutely love, there isn't ever anything there that we can see, but she definitely feels a presence. And when you think about it, it's like, did she even have that conversation with anybody? Was there anybody even on the other end of that podcast?
Right.
It's very strange. What if the entire movie was just her after killing her mother, just dealing with the guilt and the shame and the mental breakdown that something like that causes?
Yeah, because we see her do some pretty weird stuff, like when she's coloring and you don't really know what she's coloring, and then it ends up being Abazu. It's almost like a puzzle. Almost like a puzzle of Abazu, and it's huge and it's across the whole table. But then we see what looks like an urn multiple times in the living room. Is it there because they were just very prepared? Like her mom made plans for her death before she died because she didn't want Evie to have to do it all on her own? Or has her mom long died and Evie's still coping?
Yeah.
We don't really know.
You pointed out those flowers that are in the house
are dead.
And sure, they could have died a week ago. They also could have died like a month ago, Well, some people might point out, well, Justin keeps asking her about her mom and, but again, if it's all in her head, then none of that's actually happening. At that point, the idea is that Abazu got to her a long time ago, And I brought up an even more interesting theory, which is that maybe she died too, and that house is purgatory.
Yeah, I feel like that's totally possible too, especially when you throw in the recordings of Mike and Jessa, and you kind of get the feeling that Mike and Jessa used to live in that house.
I hadn't thought of that. That would be really interesting because we found out that they lived in that town that she was in. She didn't think anything of that coincidence, but Justin was like, they actually live in your town?
Well, eventually she is kind of like, well, wait, where did you live?
Right.
And then she never actually gets to find out.
Right.
But at the very end, we see the baby sleepy time doll on top of the refrigerator. It's a doll that Jessa refers to in several of the recordings. And we're pretty sure that might be how Jessa was possessed by Abazu.
Right. There has to be some sort of vessel, right? So the vessel for Evie is it that...
Perhaps that figurine with the babies crawling up it?
Yeah, it could be the figurine. Some people have made the argument that the vessel is actually the podcast, and that through the podcast and those 10 recordings, Abazu was able to enter the house. I'm reluctant to believe that, simply because I just feel like there's too much technology involved with that, and it kind of takes away from the imaginary feel of it. It's not impossible, but it's not as fun to think about it that way as it is that, much like The Conjuring, some items have, bad juju associated with them. And you bring that into the house, you touch that thing, and then you get it.
Well, I had this theory. I don't think I mentioned it to you. So when we look at the medications in the medicine cabinet, we saw Mom's name. We also saw the lorazepam. But then we saw 2 other medications, and it had me wonder. One of them was definitely like a cancer medication, like a chemotherapy type medication.
Right.
It had me wondering, what if Abazu is the illness for her mom?
So you're saying that the thing that's killing her mom is Abazu?
It's Abazu. So what if the figurine actually possessed the mom? Like Abazu was able to possess the mom through that figurine, and it didn't actually do anything to Evie, but the podcast is what got Evie.
Okay.
So clearly, if somebody else, if this other couple was affected by Abazu, it seems like Abazu has taken a toll on this town. So multiple people have been affected by Abazu. And I think one of the callers actually mentioned that there was somebody in her town who was passing out these weird figurines.
Uh-huh. And her mom got one.
Somehow her mom eventually ended up with a figurine, which wouldn't be all that strange because she had all sorts of religious icons all over the house.
I would hope that she would see a figurine like that and go, this isn't religious. This is weird.
This is weird.
And throw it out.
Right.
But, even Evie couldn't get rid of it. She tried to put it in the drawer. It showed back up. Then she put it in the closet. It showed back up. And then all this crap started happening. So probably one of those situations where when it gets in your possession, you can't get rid of it.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like a disease.
Like a disease. I think I even put in my notes, I'm like, at one point, Evie mentions that the recordings are probably a virus. And I'm like, well, she's technically not wrong.
Not wrong. That adds an entirely new element to how Abazu got in that house. So again, if you're listening to this and all of this sounds just like way deep, like you just have to see the film because like it all plays out so well.
I also kind of wonder if Abazu has been watching Evie and her mom for a really long time, because when you look at the pictures of Evie when she was a child, like I remember seeing like a first communion picture with just Evie sitting on the ground, and there's like these black and red flowers behind her where I was just like, that looks a little strange. She's wearing her all white and then you have these black and red flowers. But then there's also the picture of Evie with her mom. They're both wearing all white. Mm-hmm. But her mom is suspiciously in shadow. Like it doesn't look right.
Yeah, and I think I remember seeing that and going, her face looks distorted.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to see, obviously, because like you said, her face is in shadow, but like it almost looks like it's not her mom.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this particular movie and the use of a real demon from real folklore could have been done so many different ways, and the way that they did it in this film, I feel like I'm reluctant to just call the film a demonic possession film because it's just so much more than that. I wanted to touch on the sound design of the film because that's obviously the star of the show here that makes this movie as effective as it is, the use of sound in the film. I don't know about any of you, but I personally despise when somebody is describing a film and they say, oh, it kept me on the edge of my seat, or I was on the edge of my seat the entire time. It's been used so much that it doesn't even mean anything anymore. It's just like, you might as well have been saying, get ready for the ride of your life. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't really mean it doesn't describe the film at all. This film is one of the only films where I feel like that phrase is an accurate statement to use, because the movie doesn't rely on jump scares or monsters in the closet or anything like that. It relies on this idea of anticipation. When you're in that theater watching this film, you're waiting for something scary to happen because that's what you are going to a horror movie for. You want to be scared. And so the whole time you're anticipating the age-old devices that all other horror movies use to scare you. Mm-hmm. And this film just doesn't do that. Like, you're waiting for something to happen and then nothing happens, but you're still expecting it to happen. So you can't completely drop your guard because you're like, well, when is the scary thing happening? Like, hurry up. You know what I'm saying? Like, my heart is already beating. Just hurry up and get it over with. And like the film will yo-yo you back and forth like that the entire, in the entirety of the film. There might be like one jump scare in this entire film, but for the most part, it's all just like trying to get you to be, it's like edging you the entire time, but not pushing you over the edge. Now, typically in horror films, the eerie sounds that you hear are almost always followed up by some scary image or some scene or some jump scare. That's just how they do it. It's the same recipe for most films. In this film, because it delays that obvious and overused tactic, you can't become comfortable with the film because you have no idea when something is going to happen. Like I think most people, when they first see this, they're expecting it to be riddled with jump scares. And the music doesn't even telegraph it. You know, like in most movies, you get a dun-dun, you know what I'm saying? It's just to lead you to whatever the scary thing is going to be. But the music here doesn't even telegraph when the scary part is going to happen. So you're just uneasy the entire time. And that's why I said this might be one of the only films where I literally was on the edge of my seat because I'm just waiting for that scary part. I'm completely unprepared. So when it does happen, it scares the crap out of me. I'm just like, oh my gosh. And we see it multiple times in the film. You know, like I said earlier, she'll turn around and think she sees something, and the camera will slowly pan over to the area that she's looking at, and there's nothing there. And then it slowly pans back over to her. And you almost don't want it to. You're almost just like, well, wait. You went over there for a reason. Got to be something over there. Just show me the scary thing so I can go to sleep. You know what I'm saying? Like, you don't want it to just be like nothing because now you're just like on edge the entire time. Like, when are you going to truly try to scare the pants off of me? And this film just does that in a way that I haven't seen a lot of in pretty much any other film. And the thing is, it almost feels scarier when it does happen. One, because you were unprepared for it. But two, you're like surveying the scene, trying to figure out where this threat is going to come from. And in doing so, you don't even realize you're like immersing yourself more and more into the film. Like you end up entering that, like you're inside the scene because you're just looking and paying so much attention and so intent on trying to figure out where this threat is going to come from that you're no longer watching the movie. Now you're like in it.
Yeah. That
to me is just genius because you unknowingly allow yourself to be part of it. So then when the film does something scary, it affects you personally, like you were actually there. And not a lot of movies can do that. So, but yeah, suffice it to say, the movie is like a serious audible experience. There's obviously stuff on the screen, but even when, like I said, even when a scene transitions to nothing and you're left with that sound and the black, you're still stuck in that. Like you can't get away from that until they move on in the film. So it's just like really uncomfortable for a long period of time. Another thing I wanted to point out was that much like Backrooms, this film actually uses liminal spaces, particularly just the spaces in the house, in kind of the same way to create that dread and to exaggerate like the loneliness and the isolation that she's going through. But I mean, obviously not in the same way that Backrooms did it, but like in its own way, like when they show those rooms, even when her mom is laying in the bed and then she leaves the room, like it kind of hangs out in that space. And most people are going to see that and they're going to be like, okay, this is when she like gets up or like moves or something. And she just doesn't. No. Like it just stays there.
It stays there and you just hear her breathing and you can watch her breathing. You're just like, okay.
And I don't know what it is about having the camera just stay there for a second that makes it truly creepy. We don't see films do that ever. Usually there's always something around that corner waiting for you. And even when you know it's coming, it still usually scares you. But when you don't know it's coming, you're just, again, on edge the entire time. So you can't get comfortable with it. Not only are you on high alert while you're watching this, but obviously Evie is on high alert too. When she puts those headphones on, she can't hear anything, but she's still looking around every corner and things like that. Like it's very uneasy. And I just remember that one scene where she, is going to her room and her mom's door is cracked open. And it's like the light's off in there, so it's pitch black, but the door is like cracked open. And she stops for a second and she looks over there and then she just goes into her bedroom. And again, after she goes in the bedroom, it like hangs out there for a second. Not for long, but just long enough for us to go, okay, this is the part where the door is going to like move on its own or the light will come on or something like that, and reintroduce us to the idea that now comes the threat. And it just doesn't happen.
Right.
And I can see why that would frustrate some people. Not because they're on edge, but because it almost is like not boring, but just like, is anything in this film actually going to scare me? You know, like some people go to these films trying to be scared.
Mm-hmm.
And I always found that to be kind of silly because like it's a movie. So unless there's some ridiculous jump scare or something like that, what you're seeing on the screen shouldn't really scare you unless it's done like really well. When you can make a film that scares somebody who does not get scared, that's when you've made magic. I'd like to think that that was me at one point before I saw this film. I was the dude that was like, I'll go into any film. Like, it's just a movie. It's not going to scare me. And I walked out of this one like, yeah, that definitely.
It was creepy.
Yeah, it was totally creepy. In terms of pacing, I think it's important to point out, it is a classic A24 slow burn. And that might be another reason why people took issue with it, because not only is it not, just throwing the threat in your face when you think it's supposed to come, but it's also taking its time and building something.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's really effective. It's hard for me to truly consider it a slow burn personally, because I was engaged the entire time.
Yeah.
And the whole time I'm waiting for them to get through these 10 recordings. To me, the pacing felt right. But I can understand some viewers might have felt like it was taking too long to get to the point. That's a term or a phrase that I hear a lot when they're not into a movie. Like, it took too long to get to the point.
I don't know. It's not a super long film. It's only about 90 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We see things right from the jump. It's just trying to make sense out of them. You don't understand that it's something creepy until you watch it again. Or you're like, oh, wow, I didn't see that before.
Right. If you're just going into the film thinking it's going to be the same old kind of horror movie where everything is more or less handed to you, it's not going to give you that. And that to me doesn't make it necessarily a slow burn.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't necessarily mean that it's boring. Again, I felt like it was like building energy.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it got to the end, that's when things really popped off.
Yeah, so I feel like they really set the stage.
Yeah. And if you don't like movies that do that, then, I could see why you would say that this film was a slow burn, but it's hard for me to call it that.
Mm-hmm. One thing that I thought was kind of interesting was, I think it was the name of the video that they watched at the start of recording the podcast, or were they referencing a video that they watched previously or that other people watched previously? They said like 93 people killed themselves after they listened.
Yeah, that was
I Feel Wonderful.
Right.
I Feel Wonderful, which made me think of I Feel Fantastic.
Right. And I had to watch that myself just to see if there was anything relatable from that video to what they were talking about in the film. That's a very strange video.
Mm-hmm.
I can honestly say that there are parts of it that kind of creep me out.
Mm-hmm.
If you've never seen the video, I Feel Fantastic on YouTube, just go to YouTube and make sure that you're watching the original, because I think it's been remixed a few times or cut and things like that.
Apparently, it's actually much longer than what we saw this morning. Like there's, I think, a DVD and it's like, it's chopped up. Yeah.
I can't imagine watching any more than 5 minutes of what I saw.
I think there's like one 11-minute video and then like another one that's even longer than that. And I'm just like, no, it's weird.
Yeah. I don't know any other word to describe it. If you're into just like weird videos, like this one would be something that you might enjoy. But I found it to be one of those things where it's like, oh, okay, you can turn it off now.
I watched it. You were asking me questions about it, and I was like, "Yeah, I don't know. No, not really. I don't really want to watch it again."
It's very strange because it's not. Nobody would say that this is like a horror skit or song or anything like that. But I would not watch that at night by myself or anything like that. No, it's so weird. It's just uncomfortably weird. You're just like, I don't like this.
Yeah. And I told you how the yellowish wallpaper in the house with the flowers on it and like all the wood tones that we saw kind of reminded me of the background in I Feel Fantastic.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if they used some of that as reference for this. Because I mean, I Feel Fantastic, I Feel Wonderful. It could have very well been referenced, and they just changed the name for the film. Hopefully nobody saw the original I Feel Fantastic and killed themselves afterward. Because that would just that would make it even creepier than it already is. So now we get to the ending of the film. I feel like this is when Ian Tuason was like, okay, most people are expecting that this part of the movie is going to be the scariest part of the film. So I have to bring it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I have been edging them the entire time. Now it's time to bring it home. And I really felt like he did. Like, between the frantic phone calls that Evie was getting, and then like the neighbor's revelation about the dead couple who was talking about that lady, you know, killed her baby or whatever. Like, she sounded really convincing. She sounded like somebody who would just be calling in, you know, to give her side of the story. It didn't sound like scripted at all. I thought that was done really well.
What about the one caller who kept saying that they wanted to speak to Mary?
Yeah, that was weird. She just kept repeating it over and over again. I was like, oh my God, please stop.
So you want to speak to the baby?
Right.
Interesting.
Because, I mean, Mary was essentially what she was going to call her infant. And she didn't tell anybody that except her mom. So how did they know? That was really strange.
Definitely Abizu.
Yeah. But yeah, that entire ending, honestly, was just a wild ride. When you get through that 10th and final audio file, there's like no turning back at that point. Everything you hear from that point is just super terrifying.
And I remember a few clips prior, Justin tells her, I think we should stop. And Evie goes, oh, no, we need to keep going. This is so good. As a matter of fact, we should make it 2 episodes instead of just 1. And he's like, okay.
And I feel like that could have been more Abizu talking, to be perfectly honest. I was like, she's not even in control of what she's saying right now.
Right.
That whole part was just like ridiculous. So we got to give it a rating, right? This will be the first movie that we actually rate. So out of 5 cookies, like, what do you give this? I feel like I know, but I just want to hear you say it.
I give it 5 cookies.
5 cookies.
Yep.
I would wholly agree with that. 5 cookies. Delicious. Scrumdiddlyumptious. Part of a balanced breakfast even. I would easily recommend this movie to any horror veteran who loves slow burn films. Or films hidden with, you know, like hidden messages and
Easter eggs.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, anybody who likes that kind of stuff, you're going to love this film. If you love movies that are scary but not super gory, you know, there was no gore in this film at all, you will not be disappointed. That said, it's sort of hard for me to recommend it to like a casual horror fan, not because I don't think that they could enjoy it, but if they get scared easily, you know, this one broke the kitchen stove, people. Like, not for the easily scared movie watcher. If you think you can handle it, then I say go for it. But it's seriously, it's a really terrifying film. For us, I found it to be terrifying, but also enjoyable, you know, because we love that kind of stuff. So if you have the setup and you can watch it in like a dark room with like an intense surround sound system, you know, like speakers all over, big subwoofer, or better yet, just a pair of noise canceling headphones like what we did, that's the way to see this film. You know, maybe the first time, if you are just seeing it in theaters, obviously just watch it. But it's not even in theaters anymore, is it?
I don't think so, no.
Okay, so they would have to stream it. If you have a setup where you can actually use like noise canceling headphones or a really awesome sound system, that's the way to do it, because that is how you will get that crazy immersive feeling from the sound. Do it. It supercharges the entire experience. So yeah, that was our first movie review, and we gave it a perfect score. Can we do that?
We did it.
But I mean, I'm just like, I don't want people to think, oh, they're just going to give everything a perfect score. Like, no, there will be movies that we review that sucked. Yeah. And I will be totally okay with giving those movies a burnt score.
Child's Play 2019.
I wouldn't even give it burnt. I would give it trash. I would just say it's in the trash. Like, that movie was terrible. I don't even want to have to rewatch that just to do a review on it. That's how much I hate it. Like, so bad. Undertone, we give it 5 cookies. Absolutely delicious film. All right. So that's going to do it for this episode of Chocolate Chip Horror. We want to thank you very much for tuning in. And look, if you like what we're cooking, subscribe to the podcast, share with all your horror-loving friends and family, and, you know, just make sure everybody knows what we're doing is tune in next Thursday when we take a tainted trip to Grandma and Grandpa's house, and we give our review of M. Night Shyamalan's 2015 found footage film, The The Visit. I can't wait for that one. I actually really like that film.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
So, until then, I'm the Wolfman Anthony.
And I'm the Queen of Harpies, Andrea.
Now get out of our graveyard.